Well, this is no place to work on the bike. The problem is, neither is this. So, finals week is over, and I got nothing but time to work on the bike. I'm super excited. Problem is, last week of school I had a sculpture final due, and I kind of made a huge mess of the shop. I have sawdust and metal dust everywhere. So I want to clean all that up before I bring any bike parts down here. While I had access to the metal studio at school, I do a little bit of welding, which you'll see in some future videos. But basically now I'm all set to make the shop into a dedicated bike/engine work space for the next couple weeks while I'm on break. And I'm really excited, so let's clean it up. Alright, so I think I did a pretty good job here in the shop. Sweeping up, cleaning everything, doing some extra organizing. The last thing I want to do is I want to get this lathe actually off the bench, because I want this bench to be kind of like a dedicated engine and then rest of the bike workspace. Because like I mentioned in one of the previous videos after I got the bike running, is that I do want to take the engine off, want to lap the valves, hone the cylinder, that sort of thing. So I want to have the engine all set up here on the table. And ideally I'd also get the table set out of here, maybe even take the bandsaw off. Just want a lot of clean surfaces to work with. So let's start with the lathe. I think I'm going to put the lathe down here. Then maybe I'll find a spot for the table saw, and we'll at least have two big surfaces to work with. Oh my God. Oh my God. I'm not strong, but that thing is heavy. But we got it down there. I don't think I'm even gonna take it off the dolly. I think that's just fine where it is. So next, let's see if we can find a place for this table saw. Alright, so now I've got three big clean surfaces to work on the bike, which is really exciting. That's actually part of the reason I'm even doing all this, is just kind of to get excited for the project. I mean, with the 450, it kind of felt like I was doing bike work in a wood shop, and so for this project, you know, I feel like it'd be cool to do some bike work in a bike shop. So I'm really happy to have now kind of some dedicated space and time to just the bike. I can hopefully get through the work a lot faster and have an easier time doing it. For better or for worse though, I did spend pretty much all day just cleaning the shop. So now I'm going to have to tear apart the bike and bring it down here tomorrow morning. So I will see you then. Alright, so I'm just going to try to start getting everything that's attached to the engine unattached. Then we'll get the engine out. Then we'll start taking apart the wheels and everything else. And we'll get it all downstairs. So I just remember we have this super nice heater, so I move the bike over here next to it, and I can work with a little more warmth. Got the chain guard. Alright, so for whatever reason this master link won't come apart, so I'm just going to take the wheel out and leave the chain on. Alright, so I thought I could get the engine out without removing the chain, but you can see the chain actually goes around the frame. So definitely need to get the chain out. I've been struggling with it for like 10 minutes. Something is like seized up in there, it seems. So I'm gonna hit it with some oil. I might use the blowtorch. I'm looking at the sprocket. It's really chewed up, so I'm probably gonna replace the sprocket, which means I'm probably gonna replace the chain. So not too worried about how this looks by the end of this.
Okay. So you just have to...
Yeah.
Here.
Yep, I'm holding the brake, so it shouldn't move too much. Yep. Yep. Just like that. I mean, that's fine. That's more like it. So I did give in to the cold. Just had my dad help me bring the bike down as it was. And I got the rear wheel off. Maybe if this chain weren't giving me so many issues, I'd be able to get the engine off and bring it all down in parts like I had intended, but it's down here now. I'm happy to be working in the warm. So actually looking at this sprocket here, it's super worn. And actually some of these teeth have big chips out of them. So I feel like if I keep using it, it's only a matter of time before it breaks. That one's got a big gash. So I decided I am gonna replace the sprockets, and while I'm at it, I'm just gonna replace the chain. And so this master link, I got the clip off, but I just cannot seem to break apart this link. So I think I'm just gonna cut the chain with an angle grinder. Then we'll get the chain off. Then we have some wiring to take apart. I gotta rewrap this because it broke in the cold. And then we can probably get this engine out. It's a pretty busted chain anyway, actually. There's a lot of kinks and stuff in it. Alright, so I figured while I'm here, might as well drain the oil. Yeah, so it's dark, but it's not super dark. And I was a little worried there might be something other than oil in there just because it's been sitting outside for so long, but it looks just fine. Here's the plug. You can see there's almost nothing on it. So I figured while I was draining the oil, I could take the pedals and kickstart lever off. For those of you wondering, I'm wearing this splint because I actually broke my finger when I cut it on the bandsaw at school, so gotta wear the splint for a couple weeks, but not so bad, and I can still do work on the bike, which is great. Alright, I'm gonna throw the plug back in. Alright, so my idea for getting the engine out is just to put this lift underneath and kind of take the weight of the engine with it. Then we'll loosen the engine mounts, and then just hopefully be able to lower the lift and drop the engine out. Hey. Alright, so I got the engine out. That was actually much easier than I thought. This thing can't even weigh 100 pounds. It's actually pretty easy to move around. Much lighter than the lathe. So I'm not going to tear it apart just yet, but I am going to go ahead and throw some of this engine degreaser on it. See if I can get it really clean on the outside before I open it up, just so I don't risk getting any of that debris inside the engine. Alright, so I don't know what I was thinking just spraying that out in the open here. I now have a rag soaked with a really bad smelling chemical. But here we are. So I guess I'm just gonna get to cleaning and then we'll wash it all down and see how it looks. Alright, so the actual engine top end disassembly is going to be in a different video. For this video I just want to continue taking apart the rest of the bike because it's kind of hard to work in the shop when this thing takes up half the floor space. The sprocket. Alright, so the manual actually doesn't have instructions for removing the front forks without removing the handlebars and this top triple tree section. So I guess I'm just going to go ahead and do that. It seems weird. It seems like you'd be able to take the front forks out without disconnecting all this stuff, but they're definitely kind of stuck up in there. Alright, so on the 450 I was able to get this nut off using just an adjustable wrench like this. But this one is much tighter. I don't want to strip it. So I got this 1-inch socket which fits on there pretty well. And I'm just going to mark where these 4 grooves are and we'll cut around them and kind of make the tool. Because the Honda tool is like $115 and the Motion Pro replica is like $60. So this was $6. I just realized something. On this 12-point socket, each of these little bumps is actually the width of one of these grooves on the nut. So if you just leave every third hump, then you'll actually get the right piece and they'll be exactly across from each other. Alright, so I cleaned it up on the belt sander a little bit and got the fit pretty good. So now I just tap it on. There you go. Now you can see why these weren't coming out so easy. On the other side here, there's even like spider's nests up inside. It's probably gonna take a lot of oil, maybe even some steel wool to try to get rid of some of this rust. I don't think it means the forks are trash because the actual travel area is protected by this boot here. And so as long as that's clean, the forks are usable, but it definitely is gonna take some work to get them out of there. Alright, so I got the front forks off. That's the front end as deconstructed as I'm going to get it. And I just went ahead and zip tied the headlight wires and the handlebars up to the steering stem. Basically just to take the strain off of any wires or cables and put it on the zip ties. The next thing I want to do is get the rear luggage rack off because I want to clean off a bunch of rust on the underside and on the top. Alright, this is about as far apart as I want to take the bike. Just basically the frame and the wiring harness. And we know the wiring all works, so I'm happy just leaving it as is. Everything I took off the bike is rusty and needs cleaning, and some of it needs parts replaced. But now that the shop is in full bike repair mode, I'm really looking forward to that work. One last thing about disassembly is that any hardware I could leave on the bike, I did, and any hardware I had to take off, I put into a labeled bag. And hopefully that makes my life a lot easier in a couple weeks when I go to put everything back together. But for now, I'm going to leave this episode here. It's a lot of fun taking the bike apart. Should be a lot more fun putting it back together. So thanks for watching. This bulb burnt out like a couple months ago.